Hello, and welcome to Begin Together, a podcast for couples who are healing from infidelity. I'm your host, Janae Lindsay, and today I am joined by my dear, dear friend and colleague and work bestie, Dr. Rachel Augustus. She is here. And Rach, I'm so grateful and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I also know you're a very busy person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Especially in spring semester.
yeah.
It's madness.
Mhm. So it's like, here we are. It's 8 o'clock p.m. your time, and you're here. And I just really appreciate you. And we'll just kind of see where our conversation takes us. But one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about, just real quick to everyone, so you know about Dr. Rachel. She is an educator, she's a researcher, and she's also a practicing clinician. So you're getting all of the things with Dr. Rachel. And that's something that I really appreciate you because a lot of times in the research world, I'll just put this out there, it feels like there's kind of these floating heads, and they're detached from the body of experiences. And so you just have the clinical knowledge and all of the research data floating around in your brain. So you're the perfect person to talk about really anything with, but specifically today, our focus is going to be on boundaries after betrayal, and more specifically for the betrayed partner. I'm just would love to hear from you first. Can you just share a little bit what's even a boundary? Because we hear that word all the time and it means different things in different circles, all of that. So can you just kind of define that for us?
Mhm. So Janae let me know what we were going to be talking about tonight. And so I pulled back out my favorite resource for boundaries. So we're going to start there because I think she already defines it super well. So I love the book of boundaries, which is Melissa Urban. And she has this definition for boundaries, and I think it's perfect. She says boundaries mark the limits of behaviors that are acceptable to you, where words or actions beyond that limit cause you harm or make you feel unsafe.
Hmm.
I think that definition really encapsulates it so well, where boundaries are basically, to simplify it, what's okay and what's not okay. Right? It's as simple as that. Like, this is okay for me. This is not okay for me. Obviously, there's some gray in between there where it's like, sometimes it's okay. Maybe it might be in combination with other things it's not, right? Like there's some gray there, but I think that simplifies boundaries a lot to understand them as just this simple, like, this is the guardrails
Hmm.
of what make me feel safe and okay in relationships with other people.
Mhm.
And then the thing that I think is most important, and probably where we'll end up spending most of our conversation, is because boundaries are tricky in that ultimately they're not about controlling other people.
Hmm.
My boundary is not a set of rules that I get to say that you have to follow. They're a set of rules that I say, how am I going to respond if these are being crossed? What's it going to be like to be in a relationship with me if these boundaries are not being followed, right? But it I think so often we want boundaries to feel like control because we're scared, right? We're scared or we're hurt, we're in pain. And the idea of being able to say, you have to do this, you have to behave in this way feels reassuring. That feels like a nice place to be. But it doesn't work. We can't actually control other humans. Even parents can't control children even when they want to, right? Like, so
Yeah.
there's no way we can control partners or family members. And so instead, boundaries help us understand how to communicate those needs and then how to enforce or change our behavior in response in order to help us get back to safety.
Hmm. Well, and I think too, with that, somebody who has been engaging in deceptive sexual behaviors, imposing them this whole set of rules. This is somebody that's been rebelling and having that secrecy. That's just going to perpetuate that problem too.
Well, it does, unfortunately. it can backfire where it reinforces the secrecy around behaviors rather than actually changing behaviors, right? People get better at hiding them than actually changing them. And that, again, that's scary. Like, I want to be able to say, you are not allowed and you're not going to do this. But it doesn't work. And it would be a false security, even if it's there. And
Mhm,
so you're exactly right. If we want to have an open, safe relationship, if we want to have a relationship that's not happening in the basement,
mhm,
then we have to think about how we're handling our boundaries and our requests that we're
mhm.
setting for someone.
That's so good. It's already really shined a light on one of the biggest pitfalls that happens with betrayal recovery is the you're safety seeking, but it really presents as control. And yes, a whole list of what you can and cannot do and dictating every step of your recovery. You're gonna go to meetings, you're gonna meet with your therapist X amount of times, you're gonna all of these things. I mean, the list can be a mile long. We have seen those lists, right?
Or
And
sometimes, yep.
will make so much sense for the partner who is terrified. And it's also not sustainable. And it also often perpetuates even more of that resistance, rebellion, secrecy, all of it. Yeah. So,
Yep.
such a common pitfall of
Yep.
boundary setting. And I think sometimes, too, I don't know if this has been your experience, but sometimes some of the men will actually want the list of tell me what's okay and what's not okay. Like you just dictate that for me and then I'm going to do it. They'll sometimes even get mad if a partner won't tell them all the things that they should and shouldn't do,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, because honestly, like, I think sometimes they genuinely don't know what
Mhm.
is okay and not okay. Because for some of these folks, these behaviors and secrecy started when they were a kid. And so sometimes they genuinely don't know. Sometimes it just feels easier. Sometimes it feels more like, well, I can find my sneaky path through because I'm not doing the things you said. Like, so there's some different versions of that, but none of them are actually benefited by a betrayed partner coming in and dictating a set of rules. And I think what gets tricky as a partner is then like I've heard sometimes some like defensiveness of like, so I'm just supposed to let this keep happening? I'm just supposed to be fine with it? And that's the thing is like there's a big difference between setting these boundaries, making requests, communicating your needs and what makes you feel okay and not okay, what makes you feel safe and not safe, and then doing it in a way that's like a control list of things that must happen in a particular way all of the time. Those they're different, right? So there's a lot of overlap, but the process and what that's gonna do in a relationship are different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, truly. And it's so true. This isn't about everything is permissible. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I often think about boundaries as kind of these three different columns. So I think about you have your needs. So just to name a few basic needs. If I have a need for safety, emotional safety, I have a need to feel loved. I have a need to feel supported. I have a need for honesty. Let's just say those. So it would be my responsibility to communicate what those needs are. And then the middle column is the behaviors. So the behaviors are the things that my partner does to meet those needs or to not meet those needs. And there's a whole number of things that can help meet that need for love and support and honesty, integrity. And there's a number of things that do not meet that need, right? And
Mhm.
then I think about the third column as consequences, but the way that I've often thought about consequences, because most of us sort of bristle at that word, right? I think about it a lot as kind of emotional closeness or distance regulators. So when the behaviors in the middle category are happening, the natural consequence, if my need is being met, is that I'm going to have an increase of emotional closeness or a decrease of emotional closeness. So I can think about those consequences not just as emotional distance closeness regulators, but physical distance closeness regulators, sexual distance closest regulators. And then I think there's that whole separate category probably under there of the things that truly are deal breakers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of people put behaviors in their deal breaker category to help them feel emotionally safe, but then the behavior happens and then they don't actually the deal isn't broken and they're still in, and then they kind of feel the self-betrayal too, if that
Yes.
you know?
Yes. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's You're basically naming exactly the way Melissa talks about boundaries too, as kind of these three-step pieces. One is recognizing the need for a boundary, right? Which is that first column of like something feels wrong. I don't feel safe. I'm feeling dread. I'm feeling resentment. I'm feeling, some sort of piece that tells us something's off. And then it's up to us to communicate that boundary in a clear, kind way, right? Which is those behavior portions, right? Like, so this behavior doesn't work for me. I feel this way when this is happening, right? And then the third piece is kind of enforcing consequences
Mm,
as needed. And again, I think you're exactly right. Consequences in this setting tends to like bring up parenting kind of connotations when that's really not what it's about. It's the what will my response be in reaction to this? And you're exactly right talking about it as basically a closeness or a distance kind of piece. Like that's mostly what consequences boil down to in relationships because that's what we actually are responsible for, what we have control over is okay, well, how close will I be? And so a great example is something like I feel safe having sex when I know what behaviors you've been engaging in, right?
mm,
When I know what's going on. And so when there is honesty, I lean in and I want to build that sexual connection and I want to have that level of our relationship. When there's dishonesty, when there's secrets, when there's withholding, lack of transparency, I need to pull back. I need to have some space. I'm not actually prepared to engage sexually with you, right? And I think one of the pitfalls is that folks often feel like they have to set the consequence when they're setting the boundary. It feels like it has to be if you do this, I will do this,
yes, yes,
which
yes.
then leads to exactly that self-betrayal that
Mm,
you're talking about because what happens when the context around it means that I don't actually feel like that boundary or that consequence rather. Now you've kind of put yourself in this box where you either break your own boundary and betray yourself or you end up pushing further than you're looking for in the relationship. And so I think that's one of the best encouragements I try to offer folks as they're thinking about boundaries is that you don't have to lay out the consequence in a if then kind of format. You can just say, "Hey, it doesn't work for me when this happens." And then over time, "Oh, you know what? This has happened 2 or 3 more times. I'm not I'm not going to continue engaging in this way. I'm not going to be having sex with you right now. I'm not going to, you know, X, Y, or Z." But if you set it at the beginning as like, if you act out in this way again, you have to sleep on the couch, then you're kinda stuck to it, and what if you're even more angry than that?
mhm,
Then you've almost limited yourself too, right? So, I think anyways, just to reinforce, I think those 3 columns and thinking about those 3 things, what are the boundary I need? What does that actually look like? What am I gonna communicate? And then if needed, how will I respond?
mhm,
And it can't always be, "If you do this, you have to sleep on the couch," because what if he won't sleep on the couch?
mhm.
You can't actually control that. You
Yeah.
have to decide what kind of boundary can I control.
Mm, which is so hard. Because ideally too, that consequence column is, okay, if you're not meeting certain needs, what steps can I take to create safety for my own self or
Yes,
something? Um,
exactly.
which with safety, that's an easier one to kind of conceptualize. But when it's something like, okay, I have this need to feel loved and to know that I'm loved and cared for, I have a need for honesty and integrity. Like that is dependent on the other person and their behaviors, and so your consequence isn't going to get your need for that met, right? So it's really tough. And also, exactly what you're saying, sometimes there's partners who are super willing to do the thing, and that's amazing when they have this willingness because they know, "I do wanna create this safety for you. I absolutely am willing to sleep in the other room because this feels like an important part of our healing process for your nervous system to be regulated or whatever's happening for her." And so there is that willingness, and I think that does wonders for the relationship. And sometimes there's going to be a partner that exactly what you're saying isn't willing. And then I think you also circle back to, okay, again, I have this need for a partner who is present and engaged, willing to show up in his recovery. What behaviors are happening? Okay, he's not willing, for instance, to share his location. Let's just use a simple example. He's not willing to share his location with me, or he's not willing to have certain apps that are protecting, the phone or something. He's just not willing to do that. Well, that behavior, again, does not meet my need to know that you are working on
Yeah.
a relationship or that you are active in your recovery, whatever the need is. And so, again, what does that consequence look like for her? I think for a lot of women, then they'll end up feeling kind of helpless if he isn't willing, but they also don't feel ready to take a bigger step as far as leaving the relationship or something. So they can feel really stuck. Like, okay, well, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to end our marriage. I remember, Rachel, you telling me years ago for it to truly be a need, eventually, if that need isn't met, that the relationship would have to end over that.
Yep.
I mean, and theoretically, no, but you can sort of perfect your denial your whole entire life that you don't actually have a need, right? But I remember you saying that, and it was just like, yeah, wow, if we're actually calling these needs, which they are emotional, relational needs in order for a relationship to feel secure and safe, things that have to happen. And if those are not happening, do- I don't know. What
It
would you do?
does what it I think that's what sometimes gets really painful and difficult in some of this is the amount of, like, self-reflection that has to come into boundaries and the process around them, because it is ultimately for something to truly be a boundary that's based in, like, a true need, you are saying that eventually you would leave, and that eventually can look a lot of ways, right? That can be a long time, that can be a lot of development, but eventually it has to be that meaningful, that significant, right? And I think the quick example is I have a lot of preferences on house tidiness. I'm a little neurotic. I like my house like tidy. And so I ask my husband, could you please put your clothes in the laundry bin? It's right next to it. Could you load the dishwasher or check that the dishwasher is dirty? And because it's already dirty, you could just put the dish inside, right? These are some of the little things that make me crazy. I will never leave my marriage over these things. They are preferences that I have. They are things that like help me feel more relaxed or more comfortable in my home, but they don't speak to needs. These are not safety issues. These are not fundamentally me feeling loved or cared about in my marriage because there's a lot of other cushions, right? They would matter more if there weren't other things happening in the relationship. But as it is, those are only preferences. I could tell him 100 times, I'm not setting a boundary because I'm I'm not willing to follow through on a consequence on it. And I know that. And so then that helps me understand, okay, it's a preference. It bugs me. I'll move on, right?
Yeah.
Where in contrast, something like secret sexual behaviors, right? If I was to discover that my husband was having an affair, I might leave. I might leave immediately. I don't know. I've never told him, if you do this, I would, because too many contextual factors. Like, I'm not going to decide, but it would not feel safe for me. It would not be okay. And eventually, if those things that led to that affair and that were consequences of that affair, if those were not being addressed, I would absolutely not be able to continue the relationship. What gets tricky is learning enough and being honest enough with ourselves about which kind of category do they fall into.
Mhm.
Is this a preference? And maybe even a strong preference, maybe even a justified preference. But if I'm really not going to leave over it, I can't communicate it as a boundary and expect then that my other boundaries will hold weight.
Mhm.
Because what starts to happen is my partner would see, well, you tell me that you hate the dishes, but you've never done anything about it for years. I tell you the same level of, well, I hate that you kept this secret.
Mhm.
You've never done anything about that for years, right? Like
Mhm.
they don't, again, good humans should listen to it and try to understand. But when we're wrapped up in our own secrecy, our own denial, our own entitlement, we don't see it that way. And
Mm.
so then the boundary comes back to me. What am I going to do? Do I really am I ready to take steps in this relationship? And what sucks is those are painful. And they're not usually are like it's that unjustness. I think the word is injustice actually.
All
It's
of
that
it.
injustice that I didn't do it wrong. Why do I have to now take these actions and take these steps? And
Mhm.
and the only thing I have to say is just that what my grandma tried to teach me as a child, which is that life's not fair. Like we,
Yeah.
as much as we want it to be, it's
Mm.
not, and it's up to us to decide what's okay and not okay
Mhm.
and take care of ourselves.
It's so true. It's someone just hit you with their car and now you're in the hospital and you're getting doing all the rehabilitation stuff and you're on the ventilator maybe, just depending on all the significance of the injuries. And it is so wrong and it's so upsetting. And so often, particularly with deceptive sexuality trauma, sometimes the person who hits you with the car is just kind of standing outside the car, checking their cell phone, not actually looking at you bleeding out on the sidewalk with all of the injuries that you have because they can't even look towards the pain. This is a person who maybe can't even hold their own emotional pain,
Yeah.
let alone any of your emotional pain, right? And it's so heavy and so hard and so wrong, unfair, all the things that women and men who have been betrayed and experienced this have to do so much of their own healing. As a therapist, I hate that for people, I hate it. And it's
Yep.
also such a reality, you know.
Well, it's the reason my grandma said it a million times when I was a kid because I'm very like I am an advocate for fairness. It should be, and this one just isn't. And there's you're allowed to take time and sit and grieve that fact. You can be really sad and devastated that you're in this grief. But at some point, moving through that grief and past the injustice, then you actually have capacity to start to think differently about this
Mm.
and saying, okay, it's not fair and
And
I have to do it anyways.
mm,
So, what is going to work for me? What feels okay here? What feels not okay?
I just know people are going to hear that even and just be like, ah, and some people will be in that stage where they are doing that kind of work, and others will still be in the massive anger stages. And really, it just all ebbs and flows. It's like a huge
Yeah.
hodgepodge of different emotions at different times. It's
Yes.
not like this nice sequential thing where first you're angry, then you're in whatever. It just doesn't happen like that. It's such a massive mess of emotion. I'm curious too, Dr. Rachel. A question that comes up, I think, a lot for people is how do you know when it's time to leave? And how do you know when, okay, enough is happening that it's worth it for me to keep trying? And I know there's so much nuance here and I know there's not a clear answer, right? But I just want to hear some of your thoughts with that.
Oh, that's such a good question. And I've said to clients before, like, I really wish I had a formula. that I could plug stuff into, that we could like go back to like 6th grade algebra and be like, okay, well, because X is this and Y is this, then Z should be this. Like I wish I had a formula that would help you see the how to know what date to circle on the calendar, right? Like I wish I had it. But I don't. There are a few things though that I think can be really helpful tools to be thinking about. One that I've encouraged a lot of my clients to use is to track data. And that's the research part of me. That's the that's the nerd part of me that comes out. But I think sometimes what happens is it becomes so easy to kind of like lump things together, to like forget about things, to over amplify one part and misremember something else,
Oh, wow.
to like get lost in like one really good thing or forget about one really awful thing. And so I like to encourage clients to like do some data tracking, like watch over time. And so it can be as simple as like asking yourself, like, scale of 1 to 10, how much do I want to be in this relationship today? Or how much do I feel safe to be in this relationship today? Or how did my boundaries feel this week? Like the question itself can be very tailored to what you're kind of grappling with, and then kind of everyday tracking. And
Mm.
then you can go back over a month and think, okay, you know what? 28 of the days I really want to be in this relationship. 2 days are really, really bad and I don't. But for me, 28 out of 30 feels like enough to do another month.
Yeah.
That feels like, you know what?
Mm.
That proportion feels safe enough or feels secure enough that I can say, hey, this is worth continuing. Then I do another month and it's another 28 days. And okay, I might say, like, you know what? This is those 2 days suck. And we've got to figure out how to make those 2 days better. But if most of the time I'm actually feeling safe, I think I can be here and I don't need to be thinking about my boundaries in terms of leaving right now.
Mhm.
Or vice versa,
Mhm.
you go back and look over a month and go,
Mm.
wait, 24 of these 30 days, I wanted out.
Mm. Mm.
2 days a week, I want to be here.
Mm.
Wait, I should be thinking about this differently. I
Mhm.
should be wondering, right? Like it starts to, if 24 of my days were so bad, do I really want to do another month? Do
Mm.
I really, right? And even still, there's not a formula, right? I'm saying 24 days or 28 days,
Right.
but there's too much context, right? Some situations, one bad day is actually enough for me to say, I don't want to do another month of this, right?
Mhm.
Like, so I want to be clear that the data isn't, you're not supposed to use the data to like gaslight yourself. This
Yeah.
isn't like, well, I had 29 good days, so I shouldn't feel bad about the one day. Like, no, 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 no. It's just to help you have this really tangible set so that in any given moment, you aren't just flooded by what's happened in the last 20 minutes. You
Mhm.
can go back and start to look and say, okay, what does this mean to me? And the thing with data is only meaningful because we interpret it. Otherwise, it's just numbers. It's just numbers. And so you working with your safe people to interpret your data can really help you start to say, okay, where am I at? What do I want to do next? What would feel like safety next? Can I sustain another month or can I not? Right? So
Mm.
that's one of them. The other tool that I use a lot is most of the time clients have kids that they're thinking about. I find that that plays a big role in the decisions people are making. And there's this weight of how would my decision and my boundary impact my children, right? And
Mhm.
that's super valid and adds a whole layer of complexity to a decision because you're not just making it for yourself at that point. But one of the things that I like to ask clients to sit with is a question about, when your kid is 25 and asks you, tell me about why you decided to separate from dad. Tell me why you decided, eventually to get a divorce. Tell me about how you came to the decision. Can you imagine that conversation with your 25-year-old kid and feel comfortable giving him the answer?
Mm,
And I'm really clear, like, I use 25-year-old because we're not telling small children the
yeah,
details.
that's
That's
very
inappropriate. We let them all have their chance to have their independent experiences, right? And it's your kid asking you, "Okay,
yes,
tell me." And if
yes.
you imagine that conversation and you imagine the answer you're giving them, how do you feel? What comes up for you? Do you feel confident and comfortable in explaining, "Here's what had happened. Here's the boundaries that happened. Here's the chances that I tried to communicate my needs. Eventually, I had to get my own safety in another way, or I had to get my needs met in another way?" Or do you feel like, "Man, I would try to have that conversation and then I probably would feel guilty that I hadn't stayed longer. I would probably worry. I'd probably wonder." And again, there's not a right answer here, which is tricky. But I think that's a nice measuring stick or temperature gauge for
Mhm.
you to kind of be thinking about, how do I feel about my answer? How do I feel like I would do explaining where I'm at? Because, for example, if I divorced my husband today and, well, I don't have kids currently, but if our hypothetical children were to ask, the only answer I could give them is because the dishes weren't done the way I wanted them to when I wanted them to.
Right.
And I
Mhm.
visualize that conversation and I feel foolish.
Mm,
Like,
uh,
that's
yeah,
that's not a reason.
right.
But if I go back to the other reasons that we talked about hypothetically, if my husband was to be having an affair and I need to tell my children, "Hey, he really violated our trust. I could not feel safe with him anymore. I could not stay in a relationship where I was always trying to manage his behaviors," which basically says I don't trust him. So I was trying to stay in a relationship with someone that I do not trust. Yeah, no, I can have that conversation with a kid someday and explain, "Yeah, that's what happened. That's where we played out." And so, again, I'm oversimplifying because no one listening to this is gonna be thinking about divorcing their partner over dishes,
Right.
but I think we can use that as a way to, like, check in with ourselves.
Mhm.
How do I feel about where I'm at?
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting too. The flip side of that is, what did it mean for me that I continued in my marriage when none of my needs actually were being met? And what am I maybe modeling there? I
Yes.
don't know. That's really hard. And these are heavy kind of self assessment questions to be looking
Yep,
at.
yep,
The other thing that I've just kind of noticed over the years with those who have chosen to end their marriage, and maybe it sounds cliche, like a recovery cliche to say, but it seems like people do reach a point where they just kind of know, like they just know. And that's not really helpful. And I think people sometimes are waiting for the, okay, I'm not really in the I just know stage, so I guess I'm going to just keep doing this. But I do think there is often this space of just, no, I really know. And I know that I've given it
yep,
everything. And I know that I've communicated my needs effectively. And I know that I've given him or her ample chances to do things different and to heal. And I just, I'm ready
yep,
to be
yep.
done.
I think in betrayal, one of the things that gets messy is our ability to listen to or trust ourselves, right? We
Mhm.
get triggered very easily. We can get flooded by emotions. And so then it's hard to know, like, what's real and not real. Like, it gets really difficult. But I think one of the best things that we can do in betrayal is work on remembering the difference between what our, like, intuition or our gut sounds like and feels like versus what, like, anxiety sounds like and feels like versus what trauma sounds like and feels like. And I think one of the best differentiators for me is usually that anxiety feels fast and chaotic and urgent and I have to do something and I have to go now and I have to like it. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to go crazy. It's this very anxious feeling, right? It's if you've seen Inside Out 2 and there's the little anxiety part, that it's that like, chaos,
Frantic. Yeah.
right? Like where I think listening to our body when it's something like our intuition, our gut talking to us, it's usually pretty slow. It's usually pretty simple. It's usually pretty resolved. And it's as simple as something like, I'm not going to do that. That will not work for me. This does not feel right. Right? That's different than like, oh my gosh, I don't know. What's happening? How can I fix this? Like, and if we slow down and listen to those, I think what you're pointing to, Janae, is that like you hit a point when your intuition knows and you can hear just that slow, gentle, I can't be here anymore. And it's not this like, what do I do? Should I go? Should I stay? That's anxiety. That's trauma. It's finding that quieter voice that's just saying, hey, this is not okay. This isn't going to work anymore. I, I have to go. And it all obviously all of our bodies have a different experience of those things. Yours might be a little different than mine in terms of some of the slowness or the quietness or how you can literally feel it in your body. But I think we all have some of those differences that if we practice recognizing and practice noticing the difference, then we can get to that place of I just know.
Mm. Dr. Omar Minwalla uses this metaphor of, he talks about forced choice. And basically, you have these two doors. And anytime something happens that feels off, there's your door of trusting yourself, or there's trusting your partner. And of course, by default, we are wired for attachment. We want to believe what our husband is telling us, right? So, over and over and over again, when your gut brain tells you something or something feels off, and then you turn towards your husband and he's showing up with his mask on and he's telling you, oh, nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. And you keep taking that door, there is the gut part does get quieter, and there is the second brain injury. Because on some level, part of us feels, if nothing else, just when our deeper emotional needs aren't being met, right? And we try to explain those needs away in whatever form. And anyway, so this practice, I think, in recovery of doing exactly what you're saying, being able to discern, what is that part of me sound like? What
Yeah.
is that gut part? And it does get really muddy and messy because now you are dealing with the car crash. Now you are dealing with the bomb that just blew up on your home, and you are going to have trauma responses. You're going to have a really sensitive smoke detector that thinks that there's a fire all the time, like when maybe somebody's just cooking chicken, is a metaphor I like to use, but um it is really possible to start getting to know that gut part of you, especially as you're processing through this trauma, moving it out of your body, setting these really establishing and maintaining clear boundaries for yourself.
Well, and I think if I can add on or build on that, I think what becomes so important in early recovery where in theory maybe your partner is telling you I want to work on this. I'm trying to change my behavior. I'm interested in becoming a different person than I've been, right? And so you're kind of in this weird position of like, okay, I haven't been able to trust you, but I want to trust that this is different. And so you get to that door and you're trying to decide like, okay, well, do I trust myself or do I trust him? Because I want this. I want to believe him. I want to be with him. And the thing that I think I would try to tell all partners, anyone going through betrayal trauma and starting a recovery process is at the beginning, you should always take your door.
Mm,
Every single time, you should take your door. Take care of you. believe yourself in what you're feeling, soothe yourself, nurture yourself, then you can go back out to that hallway and get curious about the other door and
Mm,
think about, hmm, now what does it look like? Now how does it appear? What evidence do I have that this door should be here? And if you have taken care of yourself first, when you get to that door, you're going to be able to discern so much differently than when you're in the quickness of like, pick a door, pick a door, pick a door. Like, pick your door. Take care of you. Trust yourself. If you smell smoke, you smell smoke. You smell smoke.
mm,
Then we can go back in and say, okay, it was chicken.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
You were really doing the recovery things. You actually are trying to make me safe. You actually did show up in the way I hoped for. It was chicken. Sorry. But now going into that chicken, you will feel different than if you just said, it's chicken, it's chicken, it's chicken, it's chicken, it's chicken.
Mhm,
Because the experience now you're having, the trust you have with yourself is different.
mhm,
So I would tell anyone, like, pick your own door first.
mm. Yeah, choose your door.
And the guy who's actually trying to do recovery, the guy who is actually actively making efforts, will still be waiting by the other door. He might have followed you to try to take care of you in your door. He might have, right? Like, he'll still be there. The guy who's not doing recovery will be like, look how stupid you were.
Mm.
You smelled smoke and you assumed, but I'm not doing that anymore. Like, blah, blah, blah.
Yes,
Hmm,
gonna engage
interesting.
in all of those integrity abuse behaviors, defensiveness, victim blaming, turning the tables, gaslighting her, all of that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, it feels different when you've taken care of yourself first.
Mhm. Totally. I am thinking about some instances where maybe someone has the experience of, but Rachel, all of my needs were being met. I felt like everything was happening. He checked all the boxes. He said all the right things. He did do all the right things. He showed up for our kids. He was such a great dad, this and that. And they don't necessarily feel like there were any signs or anything. I guess one thing, just I'd love to hear you respond to that. One thought that's coming up for that is just also for anybody who has experienced betrayal in this way, you are not responsible ever for being the detective. That is never your job. So if he was that level of masterful manipulator that there wasn't any smoke to smell, like you, oh my gosh, like your trauma is significant. And also, that doesn't mean anything about you that you weren't able to somehow detect this. It's never your job to be the detective, right? Or to even have a clue that it's there. And that really is some people's stories. For
Yes.
some people, it's like, no, I just also neglected my own needs. And there are probably things that I would have seen. And now I know my needs are important. So I'm trying to, I'm seeing more things now more clearly. Um, anyway, and then for others, everything was I had the best marriage. Everybody even thought we had the best marriage, and then this was happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think one thing that comes to mind for me there is at least sometimes we s- we still might have been lying to ourselves, in a little bit of denial ourselves of like when we say it was good or we say it was perfect, was it really? Or had we just started to accept a level
Mhm.
that seemed good, that seemed sufficient, that seemed close enough? And again, not that there aren't exceptions where truly no, like he was close in these ways, we were intimate in these ways, we were connected in these ways, we co-parented these ways. Like sometimes that's true. But I've found that sometimes the ones who are like, this is blindsiding. I had no idea. When we like slow it down, parts of them knew, parts of them wondered, parts of them were missing things, but just were like, well, I can't complain because he makes so much money that I get to stay home with my kids. And so I shouldn't expect him to reach out to me during the day. And they've learned to quash their needs or quiet themselves to where they say, "Well, we were so good." But there
Mhm.
really were things missing. And
Mhm.
and the I think sometimes what's tricky is the absence of things is harder to notice than the presence of things. So, meaning he didn't yell at me, he didn't curse at me, he didn't belittle me, he wasn't, angry or loud. And so we say, so it's good. But the absence of affection, the absence of praise, the absence of deeply knowing each other, the absence of someone who is actively connected. Those absences don't mean that things are good. They might mean in comparison that you think, "Oh, I have it so good." But sometimes I think when we really slow it down, those absences do show us that actually it wasn't good. There were maybe still some smoke signals that something's not quite right,
Mhm.
right? And that can be tricky to, sit and be curious about if we've spent so much time telling ourselves we were so good, but I think there's at least a portion of those where if we really let ourselves be sad about what was happening, there probably was something still
Mhm.
missing. Because it's really difficult to maintain the distance and secrets needed for some of these behaviors and to then be truly present and connected in the rest of your relationships. There
Yeah.
are some masterminds that I have looked at and been like, "Okay, okay."
Oh. Mhm. Mhm.
But I think more often than not, we also have to give ourselves permission to think about that. And I think this goes back to a boundary conversation is I think it's easier for a lot of us to say, well, I would never tolerate someone hitting me. I would never tolerate someone hitting my kid. I would never tolerate, and it's these presence of that we're saying absolutely not. And it feels easier to set a boundary there than to say I will not be in a relationship where I don't get complimented. That feels harder to articulate and understand. It sometimes even feels a little bit like selfish or I don't know, uh, just too big for ourselves, right? Where I think most of us could look and say, "Oh, you should never stay in a domestic violence situation."
Yeah.
But is it okay to say that I'm not okay never being complimented?
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Oh.
think I think we should be able to, but I think it's really hard sometimes to articulate boundaries around what's missing
Mhm.
rather than something that's happening.
It's so vulnerable too, right? Because if the need is to feel loved, and one of the behaviors that helps you really know and feel that you're loved is the other person noticing things about you and complimenting things about you. It's so vulnerable to express that because then if I say it and they don't do it, then what? Sometimes I think people can also hold in some of the stuff because it's like, okay, well, I can still sort of have this idea that if I were to say it, then maybe he would do it, but I'm just not saying it. But then there's this whole level, other layer of pain when, okay, I actually did say it. I've articulated it really clearly and it's still not happening. And then what? And that's super painful. And sometimes the then what is maybe that the other person hasn't quite learned to be able to express themselves emotionally. So they have all of these feelings of love and care for you, and they don't know quite how to
Yep,
articulate it because of their own emotional shaping. And, oh, it's okay for me to express s- anger or something, but it's not okay for me to express deep, vulnerable love and care. So there's a lot of different reasons why somebody maybe can't do that, but or struggles to do that.
yep,
And not that they can't learn, but I think the willingness part is so critical. Are you willing? This might be hard for you. Are you willing
yep,
to do
yep.
this? Yeah.
The process around these things, I think, matters even more than the actual execution of them. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is that, If I have a partner who hears me say, like, I need you to notice me. I need you to praise me in some way. I need to hear that you see me. And they go, wow, I didn't know that was so important to you. I didn't understand what it did for you. That's so foreign to me. My parents never said nice things to each other. I've never thought that that was helpful. I want to figure this out. I'm going to try. I'm going to make efforts, right? And then over time is still committed to and communicating about it and maybe still sucks at it, but is like engaged around it is so different than someone who says, yeah, okay. And the next day they say, you look nice. And the next day they say, food was good. And the next day they say, thanks for, you know, vacuuming. And then when I say, I still don't feel seen, they say, what the heck? Don't you hear? I've been complimenting you every day. This is so unreasonable. It's never going to be enough for you. It da 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 da.
Mm,
Those are different experiences for me then,
mhm.
right? And I'm much more interested in a partner who is doing the first and saying, dang, I suck at this. I don't know. I'm having a hard time figuring it out, but I hear it. It's important. I'm going to keep trying. Than the person who like literally did what I said, but missed the point entirely.
Totally. There's this humility and willingness and also accountability with the first one that's really missing with the second one. The second one who's just checking the box and wants the attaboy, pat on my back, and he knows that that's not sincere, and then she calls him on it, and then she turns into the bad guy. "I'm doing what you wanted me to do," right? And it's
Mhm.
like, "I don't want this." What, to be yelled at? Defensiveness? I didn't ask for any of this, you know? And then she's left more injured, more defeated too, of just, oh my gosh. And again, that same need exists to feel loved and connected and all of that.
Yeah.
So hard. But yeah, that willingness, humility piece. And it's so normal for anybody, if you're a man listening who has been the betraying partner and you're hearing this and you're like, oh yeah, my defenses activate quickly, just know that also that's really normal. Anytime there's strong emotions, there are defenses. And also, your defenses don't have to be in the driver's seat of the way that you respond. So take a deep breath, get curious about what's happening for her, and know that that's not her saying that you're doing a bad job or something at this. That's her saying, okay, this isn't quite working. And great. Now you have more information and new information, and you can practice doing something different. So, just the willingness, I think that's so important for some of these guys to just know that you have such a strong capacity for healing to happen and to be such an instrument for her healing. And her
Yeah.
sharing with you a need is her inviting you into that healing space. What a gift she is giving you to extend that invitation to come in and help her heal. That is some powerful stuff, you know? I
Uh,
mean, it's huge. So just a little
Yep.
reframe, right? It's not that you're not doing it right or whatever. It's that she's
Mm-mm.
inviting you in, and that is a tender, vulnerable, sacred space to be in with her.
Yep. And I think on the betrayed partner side, one of the things that gets tricky is being willing to talk about our needs and express them in that way. I think you mentioned it kind of at the beginning, like there's this hesitation sometimes to not want to feel like we're like giving them a list of like, well, this is what you do, and then now you just do it and all of that. But there's a big difference between expressing our needs and talking about what works for me and what doesn't work for me when I feel certain ways and then handing a laundry list, right? And I think it's scary as a partner sometimes to think, well, if I have to coach him, like, then is it going to be meaningful? Is it going to be sincere? Is it going to be but I think that's one of those acceptance pieces when you're choosing to stay in a relationship like this is that you have to recognize that this person probably needs some help developing some of this.
Mhm.
And that's not always your responsibility. Sometimes they need to go to a therapist, maybe go to a group, have a sponsor. Like there's lots of choices, but sometimes it has to be you. Because as the therapist, I don't always know exactly what you mean when you say you wanna feel seen. What helps you feel seen? Like, I can come up with 100 ideas to brainstorm with him, but that doesn't mean any of them are actually what you're asking for. And so I think there's a piece here too of recognizing that communicating our experience doesn't, especially initially, does not undermine their growth and work that they still have to do. Right? If you're 10 years into this and they're still saying, "Wait, what would help you feel seen? What do you mean when you say you don't feel important?" I don't know. Right? Like 10 years later, that's not going to cut it for me. But in the like first year of a recovery process, you're going to have to share what worked and didn't work for you. And then see, does he take that and run with it? Does he get curious about it? Does he build on it himself? Does he follow exactly what you said and do nothing else? Okay, like, so it's vulnerable. It goes back to what you were saying of like, it's risky to tell you what I need, and then will you do it or not? But I think sometimes we can end up like working against ourselves if we're unwilling to communicate about what our experience has been and what we're asking for.
100%. I love that this gets to be a conversation. It's not a Google Doc, it's a conversation, And for him to come to that conversation with his own ideas too, I've shared my need for one of my needs is for that safety. So part of that is knowing that you're in recovery. So tell me about the behaviors that you can think of that would help meet that need for me to have that safety of knowing that you're in your recovery. And then I also have my ideas here too. And can we talk through them?
Yep.
I had somebody reach out with a question. They knew that I was talking to you, and one of the things that they said was
Mm,
that their husband was not willing to take a lie detector test. So just to get really
mhm.
specific here, and that was
Yep.
something that feels really important to her. And I'm just kind of, thinking about this in terms of this conversation around boundaries and what we've talked about. Like, okay, is that truly a need? But also, I guess, what does it mean that he's not willing to do that? Because it's not actually about the lie detector test.
Yeah.
And it is and it
Yeah.
isn't. It's like, yes, I want this thing, but also why the unwillingness? What's the attitude around this? And
Mhm.
I don't know if you have
Mhm.
any thoughts specifically for I just
And that's such a good question. I think I'm much more interested in the process parts than the literal polygraph
Mhm.
because like my sidebar soapbox is the polygraphs are limited. And I think sometimes we feel like they're this big safety, like this is a huge way to get evidence to feel safe, and they are limited in their effectiveness. And I have my own hesitations with putting too much power on them beyond what they actually are capable of showing. So, because of that, right? Like so the polygraph itself, I don't know, I can see pros and cons to doing it. I can see reasons why that feels good and I can see reasons to not spend the money for that additional piece or things like that. But what I'm really interested in is how that process has played out. Is this him sharing, "Hey, I have 2 concerns. Here are my concerns. I would rather spend money on our therapy stuff because we're limited on where we're at right now, and financially, this feels really important. And 2, this particular person who does these lie detectors, I had someone who had a really bad experience with theirs, and so I'm really hesitant, and so I don't wanna do it," right? And is sharing, "Here's my specific experience and what I'm worried about. I wanna help you feel safe, but I have these concerns," is very different than, "Well, you're either gonna trust me or you're not." Like,
Mhm.
why are you demanding this? Like, this is so unreasonable. It costs so much money. Have you thought about how much money it is? And I heard that Sam, that he, like, ruined his life because of this polygraph, and both like, we're saying the same thing technically. The
Mhm.
process around it feels entirely different. And so, as the partner, that's what I would want to think about is combining the request or the idea of the polygraph with my, like, experience needs and, like, okay, maybe I want a polygraph, but I need a partner who's listening to me. And
Mm,
then my boundary is gonna be about the process of that second one and saying, "Yeah, actually, the polygraph wasn't the deal breaker, but the way you're treating me around the polygraph is a deal breaker."
mhm,
Right? And in the first one, "Okay, wait, let's explore the polygraph together. The polygraph may or may not be a deal breaker, but let's talk about it together and decide." Wow, that feels awesome, right? And so that's the thing that I would be thinking about around our boundaries is there's almost always other layers to add in. And maybe this person is saying polygraph is 100% a deal breaker in and of itself. And if so, we're allowed to have that. We're allowed to say, you know what? The only way I'm going to even start to trust this disclosure is if it includes a polygraph. Okay,
mhm.
boundary is set. That's fine. But I think more often than not, it's a combination of boundaries. Well, I need to feel safe. I think the polygraph will help me. The way you respond to the polygraph, though, tells me tons about my safety.
Says a lot, similarly to sharing a location. These simple, simple things, asking somebody if you can go through their phone or not. I mean, little and big things.
Yeah.
It says
Yep.
a lot. And then if, for instance, the person actually ends up taking the polygraph and you felt like you had to fight them tooth and nail to get them to actually do it, then you're like, okay, well, that didn't actually create any kind of safety. And they're like, see, look, I passed, and you're like, okay, great. It just
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
help,
No,
actually.
it's that's exactly it. Like I think one of the things I would want to emphasize around boundaries in betrayal trauma is an encouragement to broaden and look at the process around these things more than the thing themselves. And I know when you're in betrayal, things like a shared location, a polygraph, a going through a phone, like those can feel like they're safety. The problem is they almost always have the limitation where the absence of evidence does not prove truth. So, what I mean by that is like if you
Mhm.
go through someone's phone and don't find anything, that doesn't mean you're safe. That means you didn't find anything. And so that might mean they're keeping secrets really well. That might mean there's no secrets, but you can't actually tell the difference by going through the phone. And so what gets tricky for betrayed partners is they use some of these safety seeking behaviors. I'm going to go through your phone. We're going to do a polygraph. We're trying to use those as our way of safety, but inevitably they always fall short because the absence of evidence is not safety. It just means you didn't find evidence this time, this way, this method. Like, it's not it. What is almost always good evidence, though, almost always, they can be manipulative, they can keep secrets. But what is much more likely, I will say, to be evidence is the behaviors around them.
Mhm.
The willingness to discuss or explore a polygraph, that tells me a lot. The ability to hand over a phone, yep, go through it. That's information for me. The willingness to have a discussion about why location sharing may or may not feel right for us. That's curious. But
Okay.
it's very rarely the thing itself that's going to build the safety. It's the process around it and how is it being handled? How are my needs, my fears, my betrayal being handled by this person? Is
Mm,
it being handled like oh, I see why you want my location. Let's talk about it. Let's explore it. I might be saying no, but I'm going to be gentle and calm and with you. Or is it these sharp, defensive, turning the table, look how crazy of a person you are that you need my location all the time? Da, da, da. Like, ah, I learned what I needed to learn and I
so
didn't even see your location. Right. Like, I don't
yeah,
know.
that's data, like you said. That's all data. That's all information that you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I know that I could chat with you for 17 hours straight because I have. I just know that I could chat with you forever.
Yep.
Um, can I just ask two more questions and then I will let you go have your evening? Um, okay. One other question. This is sort of connected with boundaries, but really, I was just kind of thinking about bottom lines. which are more, okay, these are the behaviors that I, my own self, sort of will or will not do. So it's less about what's happening with the partner and how they're meeting or not meeting your needs, and just more about, okay, what are my own bottom lines that I don't want to cross? And can you just share a little bit about that? Because this is not about like perfection. It's not about, and honestly, we don't want to put even more on a betrayed partner than what they're already dealing with. But I know that there's a lot of safety in just having your own kind of limits. And here's the stuff that's okay or not okay for me. And I'm going to try to abide by these my own self. One example might be something like, I'm choosing to, if I want to look at his phone, that I will have the conversation with him. Maybe that's not one of your bottom lines, right? That doesn't have to be, but I'm just giving that as an example.
Yeah, that's such a great piece. I kind of think about bottom lines as like my own integrity, essentially. Like, when am I behaving in the ways that are aligned with my values? That that my behavior is consistent with my own values, and that again, kind of, can I look back and say, yeah, I'm okay with how I handled that. I feel good about how I handled that. So that's how I kind of conceptualize bottom lines here. And exactly, I would be thinking about things like, okay, you know what? Like, I I want to be able to look through his phone. It does bring some relief to me in some way. But if I'm doing it sneakily while he's in the shower and he doesn't know about it and so on, am I really going to feel good about that behavior? Is that actually aligned with my values? We can probably justify it, right? I can probably say, well, he's done all of these dishonest behaviors. This is the only way I'm going to feel good about it, blah, blah, blah. But if you're crossing your own values, I honestly start to think at some point you end up having to justify other people's bad behavior too,
Mm,
because he always has justifications for his behavior too. And
mhm,
and it's different when I'm aligned in my own integrity to go, "No, that is not okay." And I know it's not okay because I don't do it. Like, even though I'm hurt, even though I'm mad, even though I'm unsafe, I'm being transparent, I'm being honest, I'm aligned with things that are important to me,
mm,
right? And I think that experience, again, is hard because we feel justified. We feel like it's reasonable to seek out safety. But again, it goes back to this conversation we're having of like, if you were to ask for the phone and get screamed at,
mm,
do you really need to look at the phone? Or
mhm,
do you already know what
mhm.
kind of relationship you're in and how safe or unsafe you are?
Yeah.
I think you already know you don't need the phone at that point, right? And then we have to be honest with that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
And that's tricky. The other part of bottom lines I like to think about is almost some self boundaries. In terms of, okay, if I need safety around sex, for example, let's say that I need to be safe to feel like I can participate in sex. Then one of my bottom lines might be that I'm going to pause anytime sex gets initiated and actually like do a body scan and
so
check in.
good.
Do
Yeah.
I feel ready for this encounter? And that's my bottom line, right? It's not saying you can't initiate sex with me. It's not saying like we are or are not having sex right now. It's saying, you know what? I know enough about myself that I need to check in before I engage in this behavior. And so I'm going to set this bottom line and say I'm going to have a check-in. And sometimes that check-in is going to tell me, "Great, go ahead. Feels great. Awesome." Sometimes that check-in is going to say, "You know what? I haven't been feeling safe all week. If
Mhm,
I engage in this, I'm gonna end up regretting it. I'm gonna end up resenting myself. I'm gonna end up triggered and having a big experience. So no,
mhm.
I'm not gonna continue this, right? Like, so so I think those kind of bottom lines too that are about our own self-care and our own responsibility to nurture ourselves.
Totally. That's so good. It's like there's the two-parters. There's the I don't want to engage in behaviors where I am justifying my own self, kind of almost going into victim entitlement, even though you have been a victim. But like, okay, now I deserve to yell and scream at him because he is an abuser and I'm the victim, and there we go. So now I'm totally justified in my onslaught of verbal abuse and harm, right? And so there's the kind of bottom lines of staying out of that zone. Obviously, that's maybe a more extreme example, right? But maybe one of your bottom lines is like, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna swear at him. I'm not gonna, Um, and then the other kind, which is engaging in those really nurturing self care, tender kind of behaviors to protect yourself.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So good. And then, okay, my last question for you is actually just a little more directed for the men
Mm,
who have been the betrayers. If you're a woman who's listening to this and you betrayed, this would be for her too. But I guess one of the things that comes up is when betrayed partners are sharing maybe their list of needs that they've done a lot of work to even create and identify in the first place, because it's a lot to be able to notice the name. Oh my gosh, I have these needs and they're important, right? So that's a whole thing in and of itself. But when she's gone through and created her needs and shared those needs, and then maybe he's thinking, because he's a human being and he also has needs, which are also very important, but he's like, well, what about my needs? Like I have needs too. And he does. He totally does. Right.
yes.
So, um, there was something you shared with me a couple months ago that I thought was so good. And it was just order of operations. Anyway, but so I would
Mm,
just love to hear from you on that topic.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the way that I would put it is there's like a baseline level of needs that must be present, period, on like a human level. And what I mean by that is like basic safety stuff should be there. And if you are being, if someone is hitting you because you told a lie, cheated on them, whatever, it's never okay. There is not a version of betrayal that then justifies that kind of unsafe behavior first. And so for me, there's like a baseline that's like, are you physically safe? Are you okay? Right. And if those are the needs we're talking about, then no, this isn't a conversation. We need physical safety, we need some separation, whatever that looks like. But assuming that that baseline is there, then for me there is kind of this order of operations of your needs where for a moment you have to be willing to set yours back just a little bit and really show up and show the willingness and effort to put your partner's needs first. And the metaphor I'll use sometimes is if you were in a car accident, a severe car accident, and they get to the hospital and they've put you in triage and the you have some internal bleeding, some of your something in your organs is bleeding inside, and you have a broken femur. They are going to start with the internal bleeding because you will die if we don't stop that bleeding. That is a first step. However, a broken femur will also kill you. That is a life-threatening injury. It has to be addressed, but we have to do it in the right order, right? And I feel kind of similarly about some of this is that we have to start in the right place for the relationship to get back to a foundation level where now we can move on to the next piece and go back and be curious about other needs. And in a healthy relationship, eventually we get there. And I'm pretty clear with my clients, like I promise you, I will not let the end of your relationship be imbalanced. I will not let I will not say, you're done, you're healed, you graduated therapy if we're still in this hierarchical one up, one down, my needs matter, yours don't kind of thing. But if you want the opportunity to get to those needs in this relationship, we have to start here.
Mm,
Because if we fix that femur first, we won't have time to do the internal bleeding. We
100%.
won't have the opportunity. And some people say, "Yep, okay, I'm on board. Let's do it." And some people say, No, I actually don't have the capacity to tolerate that. I can't make that work for me, and that's okay. But it really has to come from what's gonna be effective. I think that's maybe the word I would put on all of this is that, again, you can tell the story of how my needs matter too and so on. But I've done this for a decade, more
Mhm,
than a decade,
mhm.
and it is ineffective
It's ineffective.
when you center yourself first.
Yeah.
We can't live there, right? A healthy, sustainable relationship won't live there.
Mhm.
But if you're not willing to spend a significant amount of time there, I'm not talking a week or 2 of therapy, right? I'm talking a whole initial recovery
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Then no. With, again, this asterisk and this caveat of a baseline of safety, because I have worked with situations where there was so much violence being
Mm,
directed toward the person who had had the infidelity or had the affair, that that is fundamentally unsafe. And
yeah.
I will never excuse a
Mhm.
partner's bad behavior. That goes back to those bottom lines you were talking about. I think they are also accountable for how they behave in betrayal. And it, again, you can justify all the reasons why swearing, beating is feels okay to you. Well, look what he did.
Mhm.
You can do that. But again, when we go back to what's effective, if you actually want the opportunity to heal your relationship, it is not effective for you to swear at him. It is not effective for you to beat up on him. That is not, it feels good sometimes, right? Like sometimes that feels so relieving to just like, can you feel what I felt in some way? But it is not effective. And so I use that language a lot with clients of efficacy, what's effective. And if you tell me your goal is repair this relationship, you tell me my goal is be with this person, some of my feedback to you is going to be, okay, but it is not going to be effective to get to that goal that you want for you to break your bottom lines, for you to center your own needs before you've built any safety or trust back up, right? Like those are ineffective. We can do them. I've watched people do them. It doesn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. And really that insistence that the betrayed partner be over it already or heal by now is also an integrity abuse behavior. So trying to make yourself equal to her when you have engaged in all of those harmful behaviors and injured her so much. It's like I've put you in the hospital and now you're supposed to be able to
Yep.
meet
Yep.
my needs, right? So being able to take that one down. But I love that triage
Yeah.
metaphor. It's so
I
good.
language I've used with clients to since I love Dr. Manuela's basement language. I've really, really liked that addition to my work. And language I've used with other clients is kind of highlighting that the something like her behavior, your need, um, on like a normal relationship level, like right, like I I I want to talk about, this parenting behavior of hers that I feel is inappropriate or something. Those are main level conversations. Those those conversations happen on the main level of a house. If you are in the basement, you cannot have those conversations with her.
Yeah.
You can try. You can shout up through the bottom of the basement and try to like have those conversations. But if you want to actually have those conversations, you have to come out of the basement. You are responsible for that portion. And once we're up on the main level, I will help you have those conversations.
Mhm.
I'll help you do it. Like, let's do it.
Mhm.
But we
Yeah.
can't have those conversations when you're on different levels of the house. When you snuck back down to the basement again, can't move forward.
Yeah. We've gotta live on the main floor. We've gotta stop the bleeding, truly stop the bleeding, and then that healing can happen. Yeah. Dr. Rachel, thank you so much for every minute of your time. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. I'm like, that just flew by for me.
I
But
was gonna
I
say it's been 5 minutes, I don't know.
just appreciate you so much. And I do have one last question for you. Just a quick one, but
Mm.
you have been doing this work for over 10 years. You have poured your life's work into doing this work, and you have just your heart and soul in your work with clients. You're teaching with your students who are a number of them will also be doing this work, and your research, everything. Because sometimes people will ask me, oh my gosh, like you work with infidelity and betrayal. That's the heaviest thing. Like, how are you even doing that? Like, isn't that just so sad? It's interesting because a huge part for me is because I know that there's hope and I know that there's healing. And I know that these are humans with wounds who this came out in a really painful way. And also, I truly believe in my core that healing is possible. I would love to hear what gives you hope in this and why you're doing this work. And yeah, that
Yeah,
can
no,
probably be a whole nother podcast, but
it
just,
it
a little
really probably could. That's such a good question. I think what I noticed early on was some of these clients who had been engaging in these different sexual behaviors, pornography, online sexual behavior, infidelity. The I don't know that I've seen clients that feel more shame. Like their level of like being down in it is intense. And what I started to see with some of them was this humility and willingness to try and this desire to be different. And then I started to see some of them really start to live it and apply it. And it was extraordinary. Like the watching someone fully change their life. And it often took years. Like this is not a quick fix when I hear therapy programs that are like 12 weeks. And I'm like,
bit.
that's
Yeah.
just
And you're
eh.
done. Magic wand. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but it was extraordinary, right? And so then because I've witnessed that and I saw glimpses of that early on and was excited about it. And then now over time have seen real success from it. Feels super, super motivating. Um, I have a particular client. His story is really tragic, but the like thing I will always take away from him was that really small and steady dedication to change.
Uh,
And he really did fully change his whole life. And witnessing that is the honor of my life.
mm,
It is the most like sacred space to be with someone in that. And I think in addition, I remember early on, I had a betrayal trauma client come in, and when she was telling me her story, and I was just validating her. It was like a first session, and I was just like, "Oh, yeah." And then I, like, hypothesized or conjectured what that might have felt like, and she was like, "You believe me, you understand, you" like and so that was kind of the other side of it is I think especially when we started, betrayal trauma wasn't being talked about very much,
right.
and coming from that lens of understanding the relational trauma that can happen here and just letting people feel believed and understood about how serious this impacted them. And that moment of her just being like, "Oh my gosh, you believe me, you understand me, you can help me." And wanting to make sure that no one else had that feeling of being alone either, right? And so that was another really big motivator for me through all of this is like, I want to make sure you don't feel alone. I want to make sure I'm not going to leave you out there. And so kind of the two, like some hope and a commitment to not let people feel like they're crazy or
Mm,
like they're being unreasonable after there's been betrayal.
thank you so much for that. It truly is it's hard to put into words what a privilege it is actually to share that kind of space and to witness that kind of humility and willingness and accountability. It changes you as a human, like,
Yeah.
even when that's not part of your own story, it's like you can't not be deeply impacted by a person who has the kind of humility to turn towards the heaviest, most painful realities that could even happen. And I'm so grateful, Rachel, that I have been able to do this work alongside of you because our paths have just mirrored so closely and we both have grown so much together as therapists and specifically in this work and we've seen a lot of change happen in this field and I'm just always so grateful for you and so grateful to learn from you and exactly how Rachel is on this podcast is just like how she is in life. She is also a person who just shows up with humility, willingness, and so much love, like max amount of love for everyone around you. You have that like gift. It's like a spiritual gift. It's just who you are. You are love. And you're also very smart, and so that combination is just we love to see it. We're very grateful for it, and I'm, um, grateful to know you, and I really appreciate you again for joining me on this, and I need you to come back and do more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime you'll stay up late for me to do it, we got it. We got
Okay,
it.
amazing.
But
Okay.
seriously, thank you because there I just don't have enough hours in the day to do all of the things that I want. And I'm so grateful for the pieces you're doing to work on just bringing some accessibility and some language to some of these topics that people don't always have and get the opportunity to hear. And so podcasts are such great tools in all of this. And it's something that we dreamed about and you are living it. And I'm so thanks for including me because it's so meaningful, super helpful.
Dr. Rachel and I talked for years about doing a podcast together and she is just too busy and it's fine. And we're like, we basically just have different babies right now and we're just simultaneously raising them. And we'll see where this podcast journey takes us. But for a minimum, would love to have you a repeated guest. Dr. Rachel, where can people find you? Because you aren't actually really taking any new clients, and I know people are gonna wanna work with you and they can't really, so I don't even know why I'm asking that.
No, no. Uh, you can find me at Desert Bloom. That's the best way to contact me. So if there is follow-up questions or things, that's fine. You can reach me at Desert Bloom. But the thing I will say is what's really cool about being a professor is that I am building a small army of trusted therapists. And so I'm not taking new clients. I don't have time to do as much clinical work as I would like. But I more than likely have a referral for you. My little humans are literally, I have someone in Hawaii and North Carolina and Kansas and Idaho and Nevada. And so I really have an awesome referral network of humans who I truly trust because I literally raised them from baby therapists to
Yeah,
now being out in the world. I know the kind of people that they will work well with. I know the types of things that I can trust them with. And so you can't really find me anywhere, but if you need help finding a referral, I will help do the legwork for that.
incredible. Thank you so much. That's super generous and really appreciate that information, and then we probably should just put that all together, like, on a spreadsheet, little referral list of people and places because
Yeah.
everyone can see it, so alright, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Rachel. I will see you soon, and catch you all on the next episode. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, everyone.